I live in New England and the temperatures are cooling. So if you're like me and you want something warm and comforting, I've got the perfect solution for you here. This is my Southern style chicken stew. Comes together very quickly and is so delicious. So if you're looking for something to warm you up on a cool autumn day, stick around. I'm going to show you how to make this coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Roy. I'm a home cook and amateur baker, and I am here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Now today is one of mine, but I was going through the internet looking for recipes that I could adapt, and I found a few for what they were calling Southern style chicken stew. Now that all sounded delicious, so I thought there's got to be a way for me to adapt it without having all of that butter and flour in there, which is what they often use to make the gravy, which is why I'm thinking they call it Southern style, because it's full of gravy, and the South is very well known for its gravies. So I played around with it and I have adapted it to something that is much better in bites, points, and calories than the originals. Now, I'm not going to say this is authentic Southern, but it is Southern style. So let's go over the ingredients. Here I have a 10.5 ounce can of cream of mushroom soup. It's the 98% fat-free, and I change between the mushroom and the chicken, so whichever one you have on hand is fine. Here I have 1.5 pounds of chicken breast, and I have not cut that up yet. I'm going to cook it and then shred it. If you wanted to, you could cut it into bite-sized pieces and cook it first. I would do about 3 minutes per side just to get some browning and for it to mostly cook through. But typically most of the recipes I saw use shredded chicken, and I think in something like this, I prefer that. So we are going to be cooking them whole first and then shredding them later. But you'll notice I have 2 chicken breasts here, but one of them was so large I had to cut it in half so that they were about the same size. If you have something that's maybe you had a really big chicken breast or 2 and you needed a little bit more, just cook the little piece until it reaches 165, which may be a little sooner than the rest of it. Here I have 2 cups of thawed frozen vegetables. You don't have to thaw them. If you're pressed for time, if you forgot, you don't have to thaw them, but you're going to want to reduce one of the liquids here of your choice to 2/3 cup to compensate for the liquid that would come out if they were still frozen. Here I have 3/4 of a cup of almond milk, and you can use any milk that you use, whatever you prefer. Here I have 3/4 of a cup of chicken broth, and as I said, if you do have still frozen veggies, just reduce one of those to 2/3 cup. But that'll be in the recipe. You don't have to worry about remembering that. Here I have 1 teaspoon of Dijon mustard. Now, I didn't see that in a lot of the recipes that I looked at, but I thought it added a nice little tang, gave it a little depth of flavor that I thought was missing from some of the originals. Here I have 1 teaspoon of dried thyme. You could use fresh if you really wanted to. You would use 3 times as much, and you would put that in at the end of cooking. Here I have 1 teaspoon of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. And you can add other things to this if you want. You could add some pimentos, you could add some onion. You could do whatever you want to doctor this up to the way you like it. As I say, this is your weight loss journey. You're gonna have to have things that you enjoy, not just force yourself to eat things that you kind of like or don't really enjoy. So just add whatever you want to this to make it your own and to make it as you like it. Okay, so those are all of the ingredients. I'm going to shuffle a few things around and we're going to get started. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is cook our chicken. I have a medium stock pot here. You could use a large frying pan or a skillet if you have one that has high sides. You're going to want to have a little depth to it. but I like cooking it in this. Now I've put the chicken breasts in here and covered them with water, and that is cold water, because what I'm going to do is I've set it over medium-high heat. I'm going to bring this up to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, I'm going to let it boil for about 5 minutes. Then I'm going to turn it down to low and cover it and cook it for another 15 to 20 minutes until it's cooked through. Now this is the way I always cook my chicken breasts for things like chicken salad or some sort of stew or soup. I will cook it like this first and then shred it or even chop it up. But I prefer this method because it does keep it from overcooking. Now sometimes I will add aromatics in here, like some seasonings, some herbs, some garlic, what have you. For now I'm not doing that. I'm gonna let this come up to a boil it for 5 minutes, and I'll be back. Okay, so my chicken breasts have been boiling for about 5 minutes, and you can see there's a lot of foam that has come to the surface of the water. That's standard when you're cooking chicken breasts this way. I don't know exactly why. I'm not a scientist, I can't tell you, but it does happen. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna turn this down to low, because that's how we're gonna be cooking it. And then I'm gonna take a spoon and scrape off as much of that foam as I can and throw it into a bowl here. And you may want to add some more hot water. As you can see here, perhaps this one has contracted and now is above the surface of the water. So I'm gonna add a little bit of hot water to the pot. Okay, so now what we're going to do is cover this, and that's going to create a little oven. It's also going to help the chicken, even though it's in water, if you cook it for too long, it can get kind of dry and rubbery. So we don't want that. I'm going to put the lid on. We're going to cook this for about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. I'm going to take the temperature. It should reach 165 to be done, and you want it in the center of the meat. But I'm going to give this 20 minutes, and I'll be back. Okay, so it's been 20 minutes. I've already taken 2 pieces of the chicken breast out. This smaller one was done at about 12 or 13 minutes. So I am going to amend the recipe to say to cook it on low for 10 to 20 minutes. You mostly want to make sure that it is reaching 165. Now this last piece here has been a little stubborn, but let me check the temperature at 156. So what I'm going to do is cut it in half and just make sure that it really is still a little pink in there. It is slightly pink, so what I'm gonna do is just put the 2 smaller halves back in here for a moment and let that cook through just a little bit more. Okay, so that took about another 2 minutes to get those 2 smaller pieces up to 165. That is the main concern, is making sure that it is up to 165. You may want to check it a little early just to see where it is. All right, so I have rinsed and wiped out my pot. I'm going to use the same pot, and to that I'm going to add chicken broth, almond milk, cream soup, and Dijon, and just whisk that together before I add anything else in. I just want that cream soup to loosen up. Now I've set this over medium heat, and that is what we're going to be cooking it at. Just want to get that fully incorporated there. Now that's incorporated, I'm going to add in my thyme, salt, pepper, whisk that through, and add in the veggies. Now I'm going to stir this all through, and we're going to cook this down. What we want is to thicken up our stew here just a little bit. And while that's cooking, I'm going to shred up the chicken. I'm going to bring my chicken over. Now I prefer just using 2 forks to shred my chicken because it gives me more control over how thick it is. I know that you can take a stand mixer, put it in there and beat it up so that it breaks up the chicken. But for me, that becomes too fine. But if that's what you want to do, go right ahead. But I'm going to shred it. You could also chop it if you really wanted to, but I think the shreds just work better with the stew. Just going to take these pieces and start pulling them apart, and you're just working it to get the size that you want, the thickness that you want. If any of the pieces end up being too long, you can simply cut them in half. You don't have to have long strings of chicken in here. But Let me get this chicken shredded up. Let me let that cook down and I'll be back. All right, so I shredded up my chicken. I let my stew cook down a little bit and thicken up. And if it's not as thick as you would prefer it, if you'd like it a little thicker, you could always add a cornstarch slurry, which is a tablespoon of cold water mixed with a tablespoon of cornstarch, and then stir that in to thicken it up a little bit more. But that looks perfect to me right there. It will thicken a little bit more as it cools. So now I'm just going to add the chicken in and stir that through. And now we're gonna let this sit and cook for about 2 to 3 minutes, just for that chicken to warm back up. So while that's warming through, let me go over those nutrition facts for you. This is going to serve 6 people, and each of those servings is only going to be 1 Better Balanced Bite or Old Blue Point. If you do add cornstarch to help thicken it up, it may alter that by a bite or so. And if you were following calories, the calories are 267. And if you are following macros, the fat is 7.2 grams. Saturated fat is 1.6 grams. Protein is 19.4 grams. Carbs are 32.6 grams. Fiber is 2.8 grams. And sugars are 1.3 grams for 1/6 of this dish. So it's bubbling up again. It's been about a minute or 2. I'm sure that chicken is nicely warmed through, so I'm just gonna turn that off. Now you can serve this however you want. You can serve it over rice, cauliflower rice, potatoes, pasta. You can even just serve it over some bread, like some toast. That is delicious as well. But I hope that you enjoyed this recipe and this video, and if you did, I'd appreciate the usual like, subscribe, comment, share, and hit that notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video. And if you want the recipe for this chicken stew, it will be on my blog. I will link directly to the recipe down below. There's also a link to my blog itself if you're looking for any of my recipes. There's also a lot of other things down there, like my social media, so check out the description box for all sorts of information. So now I'm gonna get some rice cooked up and we're gonna have a delicious dinner. And I hope you'll be enjoying this yourself very soon. So until next time, bye.